my name, if you don't know who I am, I'm Antoinette Ball, one of the founders of the organization, the Women's Entrepreneurial Opportunity Project Incorporated. And it's so important that we have cause of this magnitude, because for us as an organization, it's all about us sharing information and resources, and also having you in front of some of our phenomenal business advisors, business women who are sharing this wonderful, great information. So our topic this morning is all about contracting, federal contracting and private contracting, because we know how important it is for you to increase your revenue for your businesses. And contracting is a viable way where you can in fact do that. Even as a nonprofit organization, I do get grants and so forth, but I'm always looking to increase my revenue by taking what we do as a nonprofit and getting not grants, but contracts to do work for other entities as well. So this topic that we're talking about today, getting contracts in the federal and private sector, and we can only provide an overview because, you know, when you think about getting federal contracting, it is going to take a while for you to really study and understand, and not only with federal contracting, with private contracting as well. So I have some phenomenal women with me today who have been associated with WEOP for a very long time. I have Varsha Singh, she's one of our professional business advisors. I have Mona Brown, who we go way back from her being a SCORE advisor to working with WEOP to being a member. And you know, at WEOP, we try to put you in front of women we know are talking the talk. So I'm going to let our ladies, our business advisors, introduce themselves so you can understand the magnitude of their background and what they do, and why I thought that they would be great to kind of spearhead this workshop. So I hope that this morning you'll walk away with some nugget of information that can help you take your business to the next level. So I'm going to first turn it over to Varsha. You can introduce yourself, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mona. And then what we're going to do is get right into the presentation. And we're going to start with talking, Varsha's going to talk about her expertise in the federal side. And then we're going to have Mona come in and talk about supply diversity, because it all kind of intertwines. And we're going to keep our conversation very strategic. And again, we can only provide so much information this morning, but we can certainly begin to start the conversation. So let me start with Varsha, and welcome. Good morning, Varsha. Happy New Year. Thank you for being a part of what we do at WEOP. We applaud you and appreciate you. So share with the group your background.
Thanks, Antoinette, for such a lovely introduction, and Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you so much for making time. It's 1.5 hour session, so I hope that you do enjoy it. So very quickly, my introduction, my name is Varsha Singh. I work with a company called WEOP Group Incorporation as a manager enterprise solutions. This company is women-owned and minority-owned, so we got a bunch of different certifications. We have been in business for the last 23 years. What I do here is help the team acquire the contracts in the state, local, and federal space. Actually, last year we got the GSA contract, which is pretty cool. And post the contract acquisition, I actually help them design the solution delivery strategies and work as a program manager to oversee the entire end-to-end delivery for whatever duration we are going to have the contract for. So yeah, that's a quick introduction. That's what I do. So I'm wearing the hats during the day while I work. But hey, very glad to be here. Mona, over to you.
Can I point out one thing? I want to point out that Varsha works with multi-million-dollar contracts. So this is something that she's doing on a day in, day out process. And that's very important, because the magnitude of the contracts that you work with is very important. So
right.
Really
so the contracts that we actually look for, they could vary anywhere from 50 million to a 250 million. Last year, we actually tapped the contract having the value of 250 million, had the federal funding and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the magnitude of the contracts we work with.
But I want to emphasize that what she's sharing with us, even though you're not going for $250 million contracts, these are the same skills that are applicable to small business owners. So I just kind of want to emphasize that don't let the numbers, you know, scare you, but they can be applicable to you being a small business as well. Thank you, Varsha.
Thank you.
Yes, and good morning, everyone. It's very early over here on the West Coast, but I am Mona Brown. I have done lots of work with WEOP over the past several years. I like to say, a recovering business broker. And in doing that work, I used to help people buy and sell businesses. And so with that, I work a lot and still do work with a lot of businesses that they need to grow and scale their business. So I call myself a business growth strategist. And so I help small businesses to scale and grow so that they can prepare to sell and exit their business if they so choose to. I am also a business advisor for Goldman Sachs program, 1 Million Black Women. We're going into our third cohort. And aside from that, I have been an entrepreneur for over 25 years. So I've actually owned about 6 different businesses. And I sold one, and so I have a lot of knowledge of the entrepreneurial journey, the ups and the downs, how to be more strategic in growing your businesses. So I am really excited about sharing this strategy, supplier diversity, which is a very smart strategy. So I look forward to talking with you more about that later on this morning.
Okay, so we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. So I'm going to turn it over to Varsha so we can get started.
So I think, once we go into the end of this presentation, Mona will talk more about it, because this all goes back to the spending that government is trying to allocate towards the small and minority and diversity businesses. But yeah, this is a very good news for all of you, for all these small businesses, that the administration is trying to increase the spending by almost 50% this year. And that means that all the agencies are going to increase their budgets allocated towards the small businesses, diversity businesses, businesses owned by women and people of color. So I think this is a great start for you to kind of, start to get into that space and know what opportunities are out there and how agencies are gearing towards this goal that they have for themselves for 2026. So those are great news for all the small businesses. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, so since we are starting from the basics of the basics, I know majority of you would know about these tests, but some of you who do not know, SAM.gov is the singular database that agencies prefer to know and validate the companies that are registered and that are approaching them. So it's very, very crucial for you to register your company onto SAM.gov. If your registration is expiring, go ahead and renew that. So once you go on to SAM.gov, it'll give you an option to kind of register as a new entity, or kind of, if you need to renew the registration, you can also renew it. But this is a very good starting point where agencies will validate you as a company that is legit, as a company that has at least they have done their basics. So this is a very crucial step. I definitely encourage everybody to go onto this portal and register. This also acts as a database for potential subcontracting opportunities, because when prime contractors, and I think by now, pretty much all the government contracts have some kind of, diversity inclusion goal, 5%, 10%, 20, 30, depends on the agency. But I would say about 90% of the contracts have that spending goal. So it's very, very crucial to go out there and make sure that your visibility is there, you are registered onto the right portals, and you're connecting with the right kind of people. So SAM.gov is going to be the step to take.
Varsha, can you point out the importance of making sure that they are in fact keep their SAM.gov updated?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Keep their SAM.gov updated.
Yes, because when you go onto SAM.gov, and I'll give you a real-time example. So we're working with one of the agencies. What they do, they basically pull out your data. So SAM.gov registration number, they pull that out. And that registration has your service codes. So your NICS codes, your SIN numbers, all the numbers that are going to indicate your services. So which year you were established, all the different kind of information, are you a legit business? And what service codes you provide. So while they are looking at the legitimacy of your business, they are also looking at what kind of services you provide. because NICS code and all the databases, that's the starting point for the contracting officers to kind of, go at it and look at what kind of services and what kind of business you are. So it is important, as you're adding more services, as you realize that, okay, you have added a new, even a small, right? If you have added a new portion of the service or a subpart of the service, it's definitely very important to update all of those, because the larger the database of your NICS codes, for example, your NICS code, your service code might fall into 4 or 5 different NICS code category. You shouldn't just choose one. You should choose all of those that could be potentially related to your service, because when they are sorting through the keyword of the NICS code, your chances are higher to kind of come up into that search result. So it is very important to always have that database up to date. All right. So here, I think there's just an overview of what we spoke in the previous slide. And when you go into sam.gov, it's a very easy portal. You will see, registering a new entity right away. So it's a pretty easy stuff. And make sure that you're updating, as we said. Make sure you're renewing it. You're always checking that if there is anything else that has to be added. So yeah, definitely go onto the portal. There are resources available for you to sort of guide through as to how to maintain that, how to register, how to renew. So you're going to get a lot of good reference points on the site itself.
And Varsha, I'd like to add that when we first started teaching our contract class, we would all go to, there were several different sites that we would take our students to, including FBO, FPDS. But now I just want to emphasize the fact that they have consolidated all of their databases into sam.gov. So this is the go-to site where you can in fact search for contract data information. The other sites are still up there, but the federal government has transitioned, making sam.gov the go-to for everything, for the registration, for searching contract data, for looking at bids, etc. So now this is the go-to site that they've been putting up for the last year. Just kind of want to emphasize that. So now when we teach our contracting class, we actually use sam.gov to do all of our contract data and market research, basically. And I wanted to emphasize that.
And I think it's a good step in the right direction, because having too many sites, I think people still feels kind of daunting to look at, 100 different databases, acquisition.gov, spending, SBA, SBA.net, all the different things. So I think they have done the right thing. All right. Very quickly, some of you might know, some of you probably are unaware that the DUNS number that we used to use before, that's a unique identity number. Basically, the purpose remains the same, but the DUNS number is now the unique entity identifier. That's what it's called. So when you go onto sam.gov, a new ID is created. So that's basically is not a DUNS number anymore. That's going to be referred as UEI. So just for a reference point, it does not change any process or anything else like that, but just the name wise is going to be a little bit different.
And I want to point out as well as that Dun & Bradstreet is a major federal contractor. And they actually, when they made that transition, Dun & Bradstreet lost a lot of business. And actually, when they started that new UEIN number, now Ernst & Young is a private company that has actually taken over that contract. It's like it's a multi-million-dollar contract, basically, to I guess to monitor these particular numbers. So Dun &
Monitor and validate. Yeah.
Private company, which when we talk about supply diversity, is doing major federal work. So that's something that I wanted to point out. We also emphasize to students to make sure they track these dollars of all these private companies that have these relationships and partnerships to do this kind of business with the federal government.
Okay, now next up we have the certification. Again, it could be a pretty tiring and time-consuming process. Lakila can attest to that. So, and congratulations, Lakila, once again for getting your WOSB certification. So yay for Lakila, everybody. Once again, sba.gov, certified.sba.gov is going to be the site that you can refer to. There are a couple of different steps that you can take if you are unaware as to what certification category you fall into, because SBA uses the size standards to identify what business category you would fall into, whether or not you qualify as a small business. So you can apply for a bunch of different certifications here. The process is laid out beautifully. The way that it helps you, if you are a certified you may be a small business, you may be a minority woman-owned business, but you do want to have that certification so that the prime contractors, if at all you're looking at a prime and subcontractor sort of relationship, they can identify you through the database. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter. They can identify you through the database. And when they include you in their team, they're getting the benefit out of that. They are allocating certain amount towards the small and diverse businesses. So they are meeting their project goal. So they have additional incentive to include you as a partner. So certifications are definitely very important. There are certain contracts that are set aside only for the certified small businesses, certified minority and women-owned businesses. So you do want to make sure that you start with this process early on. And I think we are in the right time of the year. While the agencies are preparing for this year's acquisition, this is the right time to kind of get started. This process may take, I would say, a few weeks to a few months, depends how persistent you are in your connections at the agency and how you're reminding that your application is pending. But yeah, you can refer to certify.sba.gov to get started with your certification. We do have, I think, Antoinette, specific classes to sort of give information about certification and the process to go about it.
Yeah, we do. And I noticed that when I look at certified.sba.gov, they have really changed the site. It really looks really clean because it was a little harder to navigate before. But if you notice, they have Discover 8A. They also now have the Mentor Protege program up and the WASB, which is the WSB program. And when we train in our classes, we encourage our entrepreneurs to consider that Mentor Protege program. When I ask sometimes, I notice that maybe 10% might pursue it, but the Mentor Protege program is an excellent opportunity, I think, for entrepreneurs and business owners. So when you get a chance, I would recommend everyone to make sure they click on that Mentor Protege program as they, get their certifications. Also, what I like about this site and why we tell entrepreneurs to go on is that red item, should I apply, is phenomenal. You would know once you click on should I apply, they ask you a series of questions and you know right away if you qualify for one of the programs. So I think this site now is really clean, it's really streamlined. And as you think about growing your business, even to 8A, and what we keep emphasizing in our training, in our classes, is that the reason you want to get these certifications is because when you reach out to these prime contractors who have these multi-million, billion-dollar contracts, having a certification is a plus for you as an entrepreneur because they're mandated by law to do business with you. So that's why we keep emphasizing certification. We know that now when the SBA transitioned over that, there were a lot of people who took 90 days. Lakita, how long did it take you to certify?
We applied back in July.
Okay.
And it's January. So,
wow.
Yeah, the system is really slogged up because I have a girlfriend who applied before the pandemic and it took her a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Pre-pandemic and pre-change over to beta, the beta.gov.
The beta.gov.
So, yeah.
And I think it took the database is a while to kind of catch up, but we tell our entrepreneurs and business owners, don't get discouraged because once you get your certification, the whole goal through our conversation is how can you strategically leverage that certification to work with the prime or for a Mentor Protege program. And that's so important. That's why we keep emphasizing through everything we do is start with your SBA certifications, especially if you want to do business with the federal sector. But when Mona talks about supply diversity, there's so many private companies now who are doing business with the federal government, relationships. Even Warren Buffett is doing major federal contracting with his real estate. So that's why we keep emphasizing the importance of the certification. So certified.sba.gov is the go-to site.
Absolutely. And these certifications and the opportunities that they sort of provide you. For example, if you have applied for a certification, that's a good opportunity for you to connect with the certification officer, whoever is the diversity inclusion person over there. It's a good idea to connect with them and sort of build that relationship while you are in the process. So there are a lot of opportunities for you to connect with people that are going to sort of be your advocate quote unquote, within the agency. Now, while you are preparing for the acquisition, I think it's also very important to understand the federal acquisition regulations. They have a whole portal dedicated to it, which is called FAR. And when you go into that portal, it's a pretty easy website to sort of navigate through. When you go onto the portal, you will see different sections that are dedicated towards different, headlines, or let's just say the part of the information. For example, FAR Part 19 talks about the Small Businesses Program, and the good amount of information you get about how these acquisition regulations apply to a small business, how the prime contractors are obliged to have these small companies with them in the team to be included towards their 30% or 20% inclusion goal. So, and while you are putting the proposal, there could be smallest things like how to put the proposal together and what are the information to be included and how to make sure that you have the correct case size and font size and everything else like that might seem really small, but I think it is very important for you to know so that you are putting a right and impactful proposal together. So definitely refer to this, and this is going to be a very useful resource.
And I know that the FAR is really boring because it's a lot of technical information, but what we keep emphasizing in our training is that the federal government is really regulated. And it may be that you weren't awarded a contract and you understand that maybe you could protest not being awarded a contract. There's so many things in the FAR that can protect you as a business owner. And that's why we say it's boring, but if you study the FAR, understand the FAR, for example, one of the things in the FAR is to simplify acquisition. And when I talk to entrepreneurs a lot, they're not familiar with what is a simplified acquisition? And basically, a lot of times we think that we have to bid on a contract to do business with the federal government. You can in fact get awarded a contract through a simplified acquisition process, which means that that's a contracting officer can award you a contract for as long as it's less than $250,000 without you doing a bid at all, because you're a woman-owned small business or 8A business. And that's why we say understand what the process is. So as you're having conversations with contracting officers, or as you're looking at those procurement reports, that you understand that you want to leverage however you can get your foot in the door. And again, getting a no bid contract is understanding the FAR and when you can leverage that card to discuss a no bid contract. And could you kind of expand upon that a little bit, Varsha, the simplified acquisition process?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In the last few sessions, we actually kind of went in depth about it. But basically, so simplified acquisition, sometimes, you'll see notices like source sought notice. And a lot of people skip that. They're like, okay, it's not an acquisition and I really don't have to spend time on responding to it. But there are things like that. For example, source sought notice, where the agencies are just trying to figure out who are the, companies, what are the companies in the market that are providing this kind of services, the pricing and everything else like that. They just want to get to know what the market looks like so that they can design their, acquisition strategies. They can design their RFPs accordingly. Similarly, simplified acquisitions when, for example, I think during one of these state acquisitions in state of New York, Department of Health, they have, if the acquisition is going to be less than $500,000, they can just go for it by meeting the suppliers directly one-on-one rather than going through the entire, procurement process, because that's cost them more than the RFP itself. So the good idea would be to understand what source sought notices are out there. I think that's the starting key point. At least in my opinion, that's a good place to start, because that's kind of service agency is looking for. You can connect with the contracting officer. You can understand what their needs are, where they're coming in from. Is this a new acquisition? Has there been another company? They're trying to kind of replace that company, things like that. And that's a good place to build a relationship and, basically convey your capabilities and why you're going to be a good match for that particular project. And you can get yourself a simplified acquisitions. We call them point of entries, but that's going to be a good place to start. Source sought notices are a good place to start to get more information, to get connected with the contracting officer, know what the agencies need, and kind of go from there. So yeah, I mean, that could be one place to start, Antoinette, if you want to add more.
And if you're thinking about how do I access the FAR, you can look at the FAR at acquisition.gov, which we'll talk about further in the presentation. And it's kind of broken down in sections, so you don't have to read the whole FAR. You can go to specific sections. For example, Part 19 about small business programs. And I think that's very important. So I recommend that anybody on the call, when you go to the FAR, when you go to acquisition.gov, go to FAR Part 19 and start reading it. That's very important. But as we talk through the presentation, terminology is very important. So if you're thinking about federal contracting, if you're not familiar with the term that we're throwing out, for example, Varsha talked about sources sought notices. We talked about simplified acquisition, and we talked about the FAR. So make sure you jot down those buzzwords so you get familiar with this terminology in terms of federal contracting. That's so important. Let me change slides.
I think Antoinette, FAR also provides a glossary of terms. So when you're sort of, I think that's the first part that they have where they kind of, provide a brief over what those keywords are and things like that. So yeah, FAR is going to be a very good place to start. Now here, one other thing I think Mona is going to emphasize a little bit more on is a lot of prime contractors, and as I said, about 90% of the contracts now are focused towards inclusion when it comes to women-owned businesses, small businesses, WOSBs, HubZone, and service disabled veteran, SDVOB, as we call them. So a lot of contracts are geared towards enhancing the inclusion of those companies. So as you are sort of learning these resources, you're going on to SBA.gov, you're reading through FAR, you should also look at the subcontracting part of FAR, because that actually lets you know as a subcontractor what kind of opportunities you have available, how prime contractors are held responsible for the inclusion and spending goals that they have towards the companies that they have included in their proposal while submitting the proposal, because this is very common that prime contractors will include you in the proposal at the time of submitting the proposal. While they win the contract, they are not obliged to use the same subcontractors. So, there are a lot of things that can happen in between, and agencies have launched multiple programs to track the spending of the prime contractors towards the subcontractors. So I think you should definitely read through it and understand how the agencies are securing you as a small business, as a subcontractor. And that could be definitely beneficial for you to sort of navigate through somewhat unruly space. But yes, the FAR section of subcontracting, I think, I don't remember the number of the section, but there is a section dedicated towards the subcontracting in FAR. You should definitely read through it.
And I also want to point out that federal prime contractors that are getting these huge, massive awards are required to do what they call subcontracting plans. So when they do a subcontracting plan, they have to have it on file. So as business owners, we can go and review those subcontracting plans to make sure that we are inclusive. It's almost like making sure they're doing diversity with contracting. And they have the SBA actually has a portal called Subnet. And on the Subnet portal, the prime contractors are supposed to put their subcontracting plans up there. But being a savvy entrepreneur business owner, I would take that one step further and go and try to review that subcontracting plan, because again, that is another leverage for you as a women-owned business, is to look at a subcontracting plan. And if they're not adhering by it, then that could be that you have a conversation with the division at that particular company, or and I wouldn't say protested, or you can still have a conversation with the contracting officer who actually awarded that contract to say, hey, look, I looked at the subcontracting plan. So Varsha, I don't know if that's ever occurred when you do business in terms of how your companies are doing their subcontracting plans, but where are they posted?
So subcontracting plans are actually, it's a public information. In some of the cases, they are available right up on the portal, especially in the federal space. So you can go on to SBA.gov, and when you are asking them a copy of the proposal, which we talked about last time, you also get the subcontracting plan attached with it. You don't get the cost information as such, but rest of the other information, including the subcontracting plan, you get. As a prime contractor, we need to, it does not matter which government agency this is, we need to create a subcontracting plan and assign a subcontracting officer from our own company to manage that entire plan. We have to send the quarterly reports to the agency to let them know how we are utilizing the subcontractors that we have with us, especially the diverse companies. So a good place would be to check out if they have any of the proposal copies or the proposal that won, that copy available on the portal. If not, you can always approach the contracting officer at the agency and ask them for the subcontracting plan. This is a publicly available information. If they don't have it right up on the website, contracting officers are always approachable.
And that brings us to the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, which means that you can, any business doing, any company doing business with the federal government, you can get a copy of their proposals, as long as it's not like if they're doing cybersecurity, some secretive information, but you can utilize FOIA to get information, to get proposals, to look at information. And they might, again, may not include that cost information, but I say use that as a tool as well, even as you're submitting proposals and so forth. I mean, would you not agree, Varsha?
Yes, and you know, GSA, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but GSA Schedule 70, our company is actually one of the prime contractors on that. In the GSA, it is beautifully laid out. You can actually get the cost information too. So you can look at pretty big prime contractors and you can look at their pricing strategy. They actually have to lay down the pricing strategy for year by year, how much, increment they're going to add into their pricing, as inflation or whatever. But yeah, you can also get the pricing schedule in some of the cases, especially if you're looking at the GSA, which many of you might not refer to at this moment, but I think it's a good place to start. So you can also kind of, get an idea, okay, what kind of pricing strategies sort of companies are putting together. So in some cases, yeah, you might get that, but in majority of the cases, you might not.
Okay, let's move to the next one.
All right, cool. So as Antoinette was saying about the simplified acquisitions and no bid opportunities. So there are two kind of acquisitions, if you can kind of, if you want to mostly categorize them. So no bid opportunities are where there is a need at the agency, but they really do not have to conduct a, competitive bid for that. Reason might be that, okay, if it is a rebid or, if the contract value is not as high, for example, contracting officer, if the contract value all put together is less than $250,000, that's for federal, $500,000 for the state government, they can issue a simplified acquisition, which means that they, it all starts from the relationship. You connect with the contracting officer, you understand what the needs are, you send your capability statement. They are going to release a simplified acquisition only for your company, or let's just say there are a couple of different companies for maybe just two companies. And I've seen that happening in the state of Pennsylvania, I think we were working at. But yeah, you can always get a simplified acquisition if they are purchasing for less than $250,000. This could be a product, this could be a service. It goes in both the direction. Set aside is going to be a little bit over that simplified acquisition process, because set asides can be competitive. They can also be for a particular company. So in the set aside, they are only inviting WSPs or SBA certified companies, basically small and diverse companies. And those contracts are only for those diverse companies. I think you should refer to FAR Part 13 for more information. But simplified acquisitions are always, one thing to ensure that you're not going into the in-depth competition that sometimes we see in the proposal. Sometimes we see about 70, 80 companies competing for one contract. The other kind of acquisition is a no bid acquisitions, where if they have a really small purchase, it could be mostly in the cases of products less than $10,000. Contracting officers, they have the rights to them that they can purchase that product without any simplified acquisition process, without any acquisition process per se, without going through the procurement as such. So I think these no bid opportunities are a great place to start, but I cannot emphasize enough on the value of relationship here. because this is something that you're not going to see on the portals right away. This is something that you will get to know majority of the times when you're building that relationship with the agency, when you're getting to know that what kind of needs that they're going to have coming up, attending their webinars, attending their virtual events. I think that's a great place to begin with, to get to know people and connect with the right kind of individuals.
So it's not just you get the phone, hey, can I have a simplified acquisition? You really have to do your research and know what you're purchasing, to have a point of contact where you can maybe negotiate or talk about a contract that they provided that they might do another kind of service for you. So you kind of have to know what you're talking about when you converse with the contracting officers.
Right. And one of the subcontractors that we were working at while we were working with Washington, D.C.'s Metro, so that's a federally funded transportation unit. So that subcontractor, they saw a sort notice for one of the products related to threat hunting. So they were in the cybersecurity space. They saw one of the needs. There was just the source sort notice. They were just trying to figure out what kind of companies are actually, if they have that kind of product. They reached out to the contracting officer. They tried understanding more about the opportunity. The next month, they are sitting with the CIO of the agency, understanding more about the need. The agency actually released a simplified acquisition because that was over, I think, 150 close to. They released a simplified acquisition process for them, and it was in for that company. So I think source sort notices, again, I'm emphasizing, they're a good place to start because that's where you're going to get to know what needs the agencies have. And that's your talking point. That's your point to start researching and to start getting to know what kind of updates company has had in the past in that area, and kind of go from there and then build your relationship with the knowledge that can help you.
Okay, moving right along. Let me go to the next one.
All right. Now, as Antoinette was saying, transparency and valuable information. Some of the things that are going to help you, obviously, you have the right of information. You can always ask the agency, okay, I want to look at that information. I want to look at that proposal. But I think about 80% of the research you will have to do on your own. And I think you can't get at a better place than federal, databases to start your research and get as much information as possible. SBA.gov is a great place. FAR gives you all the information about the regulations. You can always look at the particular agency's website and look at what kind of acquisitions that they had in the past. You can also look at what kind of companies they have been awarding the awards to. You can look at what kind of competition you can go into. So there is a bunch of data available. And all the information that is available to you I think it's a good idea to spend time and really understand the market, really understand the agencies. For example, if you're selling a service and you're wanting to do a business with the agency, you really have to understand, is the agency really going to purchase the services that you're providing? A good place to begin with is a forecast report. You can look at the previous acquisitions, you can look at the acquisitions that are coming up, and then and there, you're going to know whether or not there's a right place to invest time into. Then you can understand more about it, looking at the previous acquisitions, what kind of companies got the award, what kind of strength that they have, things like that. So market research is very, very important. And I think contracting officers do appreciate when a company has done their research. That's when they like to talk to you. They definitely don't want to hear the questions, okay, what kind of projects do you have coming up? I mean, that's the worst question that you can ask. So conduct your research. Look at what kind of services they purchase, because some of the agencies, especially in the defense side, they release their yearly reports mentioning the NICS codes, saying that, okay, this is the NICS code that has been in the top purchases for the year. So you know that this is a service code. If it matches your service code, great. You know that your services are in the high value and high demand in the agency. So those kind of researches are going to be very, very helpful. And as I was saying, in the research, forecast reports can get very, very boring and tiring to look at times, but it's a very good indication of matching your NICS code, of looking at what kind of, so basically forecast report in general, it's, they give you the information, what kind of services agency is buying, from what kind of companies they're buying these services from. what kind of contract vehicles they are using if they are not buying directly. For example, some agencies might use the GSA, for example, to purchase the information technology services. Some agencies might have their own contract vehicles to purchase those services. So it's important for you to understand which contract vehicle is going to help you, or you can just go directly into the acquisition process. You also get to see, are they releasing only the larger contract, having, let's just say, more than 10 million, 20 million in value, or are they also releasing set aside and sole sought, things like that. So you know which is in your, let's just say you can only take up to 250 or 500,000 value of contract. You cannot take more than that, because there are also limitations that the contract value should not be more than, I think, 30% of your entire business value or your entire yearly revenue. So there are regulations like that. So looking at the forecast report is definitely going to help.
And when we may not have, Varsha, we may not have enough time because we need to get into Mona's presentation as well to actually go to the site, but we do recommend that you visit acquisition.gov, navigate down to procurement forecast and take a look. And one of the agencies, for example, they would tell you exactly how to do business with them, like doing business with the Department of Justice. So when you go to acquisition.gov and when you navigate down to the procurement reports, what happens is it pops up a window that provides you with the names of different agencies that you may want to do business with. And then usually a page like this will come up, and that agency will tell you how you can do business with them. And then it also will list their procurement report. So we recommend, we may not have time to hop in it today, but that you, for sake of time, because we do want to get to the other presentation, that you jot down acquisition.gov and that you go there. And I also put it in the chat area, and if you go there and look at the forecast reports, because this provides you with, like Varsha was saying, a projection of who the federal government is doing business with and upcoming contract opportunities and the different socioeconomic opportunities like U.S. and women-owned small business or aid, etc.
And one thing very quickly I would want to highlight, they also give you the contracting officer's name. Good place to start.
And phone number.
Start building relationships. Yep.
And email address, which starts your market research, which is so valuable.
Yeah. That's your free database right there. Cool. Now, Andrea, do you want me to go into it, or if, I know we are running short on time, and
I would just say because we're not gonna have time to go into the databases, which is what we do in our WEOP classes. We actually go through the databases. So I just want everybody to jot down these valuable, transparent, like usaspending.gov databases that they can go in and track this information, because as we keep pointing out, this is how you're going to create your market research for who you're going to pursue business with. You can, in USA Spending, you can go by zip code and you can look at loans and grants and government contracts in your specific areas. So it's so many things you can do with USA Spending, from identifying potential partners to identifying who's doing business in that particular area. And that's why we emphasize the importance of going in and out of these databases. So the acquisition.gov is one database, and the usaspending.gov is another database that we recommend that you go in and out of. And
absolutely. And all these databases and all this information is available for free. So you don't have to create an account, and you don't have to spend money to kind of register or anything else like that. So these databases are available and they are at your disposal. So definitely make good use of that. Now, SBA, as Antoinette and I have been mentioning, SBA is a good place to start. Mentor Protege program especially is going to be your, excuse me.
Michelle, you raise your hand if you have a question.
Yes, there's a comment in the chat that I definitely agree with. Is there any way that you can connect business owners that's here to other women that were successful with winning a contract? In the chat.
Actually, that is a good question, because the databases, again, like the DSBS is a database that shows all certified women-owned businesses. And you can search the Dynamic Small Business Search, DSBS, and you can search other businesses geographically by NACES code, and this gives you a listing of women who are actually certified to do business. Now, another database that you could possibly identify women who actually secure contracts is, Varsha talked about the GSA schedule. That's another database, but you're gonna have to get into those databases and kind of look at that information too. But we talked about SAM.gov, and SAM.gov.
SAM.gov is there, and USA spending, even if you look at that portal, so you get pretty advanced filters. You can search it by the zip code. You can also search what kind of companies you're looking at. You can look at, what kind of contract it was. And you can also, put up a filter. Okay, I want to only look at the women-owned small businesses that have gotten the contract. You're going to get the entire list of the contracts that were awarded to, these small women-owned businesses, and that's a good place to start. I think, it's going to take a little bit of research for you to kind of look at what kind of business that is the person who has the business registered under her name, is she operating the business, things like that. So I think it's going to take a little bit of research, but the database is available to you.
But are they willing to help us? Would they be willing to give us free time to give us a walkthrough on the steps they took to win the bid? Do you think?
think that's going to be very case
In
specific,
fact,
Antoinette.
That's a loaded question, because like we had a session at the SBA on Tuesday, and we actually brought a lady in, Michelle, who won a $900 million contract. So what we try to do as WEOP is to have group sessions where you can have conversations with women who are winning these kind of contracts. It's so hard to get people on the phone and say, hey, you want a contract? And you sit and share with me all your ins and outs. Sometimes that's not possible. But it is possible, maybe in group settings, and like Lakeela can attest to that, having somebody in the room that's won contracts where we're sitting them in front of you in a group setting where they can talk about how they won contracts. And as an organization, that's what we try to do all the time.
I have a question
Okay.
too. You mentioned the mentorship protege program on the SBA, and I'm looking at it now. Have you had anybody to go through that program, or, before I actually sign up for it? Do you know anything about it as far as how it goes or anything like that? Do you have any
I mean, I would definitely,
on that?
I have had women who actually had success with the Mentor Protege program, but I would recommend that you don't hesitate about signing up, because you have to do your own research. You have to make it applicable for what you're trying to do, so you can win in a situation. So I just think it's a valuable resource. There's also online, they list all the mentor protege agreements, which show, like, I think there's about 2,000 active agreements that have actual companies that have mentor protege agreements with smaller companies. So I would say that you do your research, don't go off anybody else, because it could be advantageous for what you're doing. And we can have an offline conversation. I can show you where you can go look at some other mentor protege agreements that kind of give you an idea of how the program works, basically.
Right, and on the SBA.gov, you also get the location-specific SBA consultants that are actually there to connect with you as a small business.
Yes.
So that's another resource that you can use. For example, for your location, there may be a couple of different people that are there to help you. So you can actually take a lot of questions to them if you're not able to, figure something out, if you're not getting certain information. There are also procurement technical assistance centers. We call them PTAC, especially if you're a company that has technical services or anything else, that kind of nature. They actually, handhold you through the procurement and the proposal process. So I think that's another amazing resource to use.
And Rhonda, if you're in Georgia, Carol Tom, are you in Georgia? Okay, I have a contact for you, Carol Thompson. She actually started the program. So reach out to me and I share her information.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And this brings us to this slide right now, because the SBA is a valuable resource. So we say stay connected to your SBA local district office. And they have people down there that can talk to you about the SBA Mentor Protege program. So Carol Thompson, and I'll put her name in the chat, and you can reach out and I can give you your email address as well. Okay, Varsha, so we're gonna,
All right.
I didn't know we
All
were
right,
kind of like running a little bit out of time, but we can, you can
I think we are just wrapping it up. Yeah, we are just wrapping it up, because a lot of things we talked about, they're gonna sort of emphasize on preparation For example, a lot of time you have to assess your own business. You have to be at the shoes of your customers and you have to assess your business. If you want to spend money into this business, what are the things that you're going to look at? Is this business financially stable? Can they really, take care of the contract that's going to be assigned to them? Can you deliver the scope of work? I think that's a big question to make sure that you are only taking the projects that you can deliver, because that can actually throw you off a very bad position. If you do take the contract, especially if it is a single source contract, which means you are the only contractor and you cannot deliver the scope of work. So you have to really ensure that you have the capabilities to deliver it. Do your pricing research. Make sure that your pricing is competitive. You don't want to quote a $500 per hour for a service that other companies are providing at $200 an hour. So you just have to be realistic. You have to be competitive, especially being a small business. That is, I mean, nobody's going to come out and say that out loud, but then that's something which contracting officers do expect. If you're a small business, your pricing is expected to be kind of pretty competitive. And that's additional advantage. Pricing, I think pricing, when they evaluate the proposals, pricing section often is at least a 30% of evaluation of the entire procurement process, if not more. So, it does impact. Also, can you deliver a quality product or service? Because that's a door opener for you. You may be starting with a small contract. If your services are good, you're going to get the recommendations. And then you're going to be confident enough to go ahead and ask for the recommendation for, let's just say, additional subscripts or additional category managers or whatever have you, especially in the commercial domain, because there all the relationships are open. You do have the window to approach other groups within the company. Good references, very important. Certifications, they are, you may be a small and women-owned business, but you do need that certification to, as a official stamp, some sort on that, and that definitely helps. So yeah, preparation, do spend that time in market research. It is time consuming and for a large part kind of mind-boggling, but I would recommend to spend time on that. As you spend more time, it's going to become so easy for you. You're going to navigate through those databases like butter. So I think that's a good spend some time.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to turn it over to Mona.
All right, thank you, Varsha, you really covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. There's so much involved in federal contracting, and that's why it's very important to enroll in the federal contracting course that WEOP offers, because it does a much deeper dive into this process. So now I'm going to cover supplier diversity. I want to talk about another business growth strategy, and that is supplier diversity. So, and it's a great way to grow and scale your business. It's a very smart strategy. You basically take the same approach that you would on the federal contracting side, but it's just a different process because you're going to be connecting with major corporations. So you'll be partnering with major corporations and contracting with major corporations. And basically, as you can see, major corporations want to diversify their spending efforts in contracting, giving contracting opportunities. And it's not federally mandated for them to do that, but it is a good faith effort that corporations want to take. And so they consider diverse spending opportunities with women-owned businesses, with economically disadvantaged businesses. So the certifications that you get on the federal side, you can actually leverage those certifications to prepare you on the supplier diversity side, working with the corporations. Let's see here. Hold on one second, because I promise you I'm not able to There we go. See some of the wording. Just one second. So let's dig deep in what a third-party certification is and what diverse spending looks like on the supplier diversity side. So basically, supplier diversity program it's a business program that encourages corporations to use minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, even LGBT-owned companies, small businesses. To allow them to be a supplier for the corporation. So let me give you an example. So for example, UPS. UPS is in the business of delivering, they're a delivery business, right? They're not in the business of manufacturing boxes or manufacturing tape that is needed to cover the boxes. So what UPS will do is they will provide a contract for a diverse group of suppliers who maybe have a manufacturing company that manufactures boxes. So they give that contract to that box manufacturer who is considered a minority or a woman owned or any of the designations, and they give that contract to them. And so they are, so that small business then is considered the supplier. So that is how that works. So the classifications on the supplier diversity side, again, keeping in mind that you're going to leverage your certifications on the federal side, because some of the same paperwork that you do on the federal certification side, you use the same paperwork to obtain these classifications: the small business enterprise, the minority-owned business enterprises, the woman-owned business enterprise. So that these are the classifications on the supplier diversity side. And again, they've expanded it to LGBTQT and veterans, and also other groups of people with disabilities. They've expanded the opportunities to those groups. So as a woman owned business or a minority owned business, you have to understand the process and preparation for the federal contracting side. You want to leverage that information on the supplier diversity side, because you're going to be using that information, but on the corporate side of things. So when you think about certifications to obtain, you always want to do the following. You want to focus on the following. So you want to make a list of a corporation or corporations that you are interested in partnering with. And these could be companies that either use your product or service. Well, period. They are companies, they would be companies that use your product or your service. So you have to be very strategic and methodical in thinking, okay, what company uses my product? So give you an example. One of the business scholars through the Goldman Sachs program, which I'm a business advisor for, one of the business scholars, which is the business owner, she is an artist, and she creates art that gets transposed on anything, furniture, just about anything. And so she decided that she wanted to, do business with T-Mobile and provide the artwork for the phone covers, the cell phone covers for T-Mobile. That, a lot of her artwork is very representative of us. And so if you think about it, you go into a T-Mobile store or you go into major stores, like even Best Buy, you're not going to see any ethnic related phone covers. You're going to see like I'm I should be ashamed to say this, but like my phone cover is by Kate Spade. But I would love to be able to see a motif that looks like me as my phone cover. So in order for that business scholar to do business with T-Mobile, they have to enter into the supplier diversity program, and it is a process. So the first thing you want to do is you definitely want to make a list of companies that could use your product or service. The other thing that you want to do is, well, you should know that these corporations actually belong to a national, let's see here, they belong to a national council. So this is it's voluntary for these corporations to participate in supplier diversity, but they belong to a conglomerate. They are members of a national council of supplier diversity programs. And so you can do research on the companies that you're interested in. You go onto their website. You have to dig deep to see if they are a part of the supplier diversity program, or if they offer supplier diversity programs. So it's just a matter, it's a lot of it, well, not a lot, but it is some research involved in that. And so when you think about supplier diversity in federal dollars that are being made available to small businesses, again, you have the corporations. You want to think about even city municipalities have contracts. The county in which you live, or maybe a county you want to do business with, offers contracting opportunities. And of course, state governments, you have anchor institutions, you even have universities and colleges that have contracting opportunities. So, you know, you really have to open your mind and understand that there's a lot of spending being done by these entities, and you want to be a part of the spending. Like, you want to be on the receiving end of getting a contract and be a part of receiving that spending. And so these are just some strategies that you can pursue in order to put yourself in position. So in the private sector, these are examples of some of the deal makers. So for example, Microsoft has more than 5,000 subcontracts with the Department of Defense and various federal law enforcement agencies since 2016. So if you become a part of their supplier diversity program, then you may do some work for them as a subcontractor, as a sub to the sub contractor for the federal government. So a lot of these corporations do have federal contracts, and they need suppliers to help them fulfill those federal contracts. Amazon has more than 350 subcontracts with the military, you know, and then these are some other companies that have federal contracts, or that may have supplier diversity opportunities. I mean, and the list goes on. You will find, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Antoinette, when you offer the federal when you do the deep dive in the federal contracting, I believe you're going to have a portion that does a deeper dive in the supplier diversity opportunities.
Because it kind of all intertwines, and I could ask the audience right now, from what you've learned about the databases, like Mona, you're pointing out all these companies are doing business with federal government. There's one database where you can actually go and track spending. And from our presentation today, which database is that, everyone? Let me look at the chat. Which database is that? Hello? Anybody can answer? USAspending.gov. Because at usaspending.gov, when you look by zip code information, you can see all these companies that are doing business with the federal government. And Lakila, you have your hand up.
I'm driving now, so that's why I didn't answer in the chat. But I actually had a different question, not related to usaspending.gov. So, but I did know that answer.
Okay. But I want to emphasize the fact that, and we asked your question as Mona's going to wrap up in a minute, but I want to emphasize the fact that if you track spending, you want to track the companies. I made a notation. You want to track the private companies that are receiving contracts with the federal government. That's what you would like to do. Out of all these private companies, track who's doing business and who may be able to procure your goods and services. And then you want to leverage that WSB when you try to negotiate a subcontract with them. And I think that's the kind of point that what Mona's trying to emphasize when in sharing of this information. I'm sorry, Mona, go ahead.
Absolutely. And so here's some strategies to participate in supplier diversity. So you want to track the opportunities, as Antoinette said, and leverage your status as a woman or minority-owned business with that prime contractor or that corporation. So you want to pursue their subcontracting opportunities, and you want to know who's doing business. Again, so you are going to have to do a little research to see what corporations have federal contracts. And then you also want to leverage your status as a women-owned small business or a economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business to obtain those subcontracts with the prime contractor / corporation. So the way that we see fit to approach this is you really have to establish a mindset to take a strategic approach to pursuing contract opportunities. So you want to develop a plan of action with the private or the corporate sector, because that's what I'm talking about. And then you also want to develop a plan on the federal side. So you want to understand the federal contracting process and apply to the, what does that DBW stand for?
Doing business with. That's what.
You want to apply that same approach to the private sector. So these are some action steps that you can take. So you want to do some research, you want to compile market information. Like, for example, you want to know what corporations use your service or use your product. Now the second step is, on the federal contracting side. So hopefully you would have done this part. And this is more federal contracting related. I think some of these action steps. So, because you don't have to have a capability statement on the private sector side, but it will help you to be able to do that, because when you set up a meeting, when they set up a meeting for you to basically sell your service and help them understand that you're the best candidate, you will pull from your capability statement. So it's not a waste. It's just a different approach in how to communicate it. So again, these slides are going to be provided to you. And we're gonna open up the floor for questions about the federal contracting side, and as well as the private sector side. So, hold on.
Great.
And that concludes my portion of it. So let's open it up.
Okay, and I think Lakila, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. So thank you, Mona, for that. Appreciate your perspective as well. Varsha, always great to hear your information. The question that I have, so my customers right now are corporations, but I don't have any of the certifications that you mentioned. So for instance, I'm meeting tomorrow with Amazon about an engagement. Would you, from a strategic standpoint, would you recommend, if whether we're in the door with a company already, or we're working on building a relationship to do some work with a corporation, would you mention certifications that we have on the federal side? And also, how do I become a part of your, the supplier diversity program? Or how do you, especially if we already have ongoing relationships, how do you advise navigating that?
Yeah, so what I would do, the operative word here is leverage. So before you go into the meeting, I would do a deep dive into Amazon's website and just see, because you don't want to ask them going into the meeting, do you have a supplier diversity? You want to know that they have one.
Exactly, yeah.
So you definitely want to, and usually it's not on the main page of their website. So you do have to go into, you have to deep dive into.
And you can Google. I find Google helps.
Yeah, I call it Uncle Google. Yeah, Uncle Google knows everything. But yeah, you want to know, Lakila, going into your meeting that they are a part of the National Council of Supplier Diversity members. And so when you go into your meeting, you want to leverage your certification on the federal side. You want to be able to sell that. Yes, I am certified with the federal to do business with the federal government, and these are my certifications. And even let them know, hey, and I am in the process of getting certified on the supplier diversity side, on the private sector side. But you've kind of skipped a step. You've already built the relationship. And so they're going to tell you, okay, this is what you need to do for us to sign a contract or to give you a contract. They'll let you know in that meeting. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And basically, I think Mona's saying that you really have to do your research, because you don't want to present, like, for example, I do a lot of fundraising. So before I meet with the company, I'm researching what they're doing. And I can almost like say, I know you funded X, Y, Z, et cetera. So you may want to do your research, come in with information about what they're doing or what they have done, if it's applicable to that situation, and then have a discussion centered around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how you have to, but you have to really go in there knowing and understanding. And I don't know who you're going to meet with or what it's pertaining to or any of that. But if you're going to leverage that certification and talk about maybe a contract that was done before, or just like I said, I don't know what that situation is, but I know that when I'm going in, I'm always doing my research. So if I'm going to approach a sponsor and I want them to fund a project, I might mention a similar project that they funded that's similar to mine's. That could be a way that we can start the discussion.
That's very helpful. I appreciate that advice.
Okay.
Varsha,
and yeah, very quickly to add to that. So I was actually in a meeting with Amazon, I think last year. There was a person called Isaac Sobias, who was the procurement manager there. I'm not sure, Lakila, if you're meeting the same person, because Amazon has recently ramped up their programs to increase the inclusion from the supplier diversity side. And on the corporate, I think on the general level, pretty much every company, larger corporation, Fortune 500, including if you're talking about Fortune 500 or 1,000, they pretty much always have a portal called Supplier Diversity Portal. So if you just Google the company name and Supplier Diversity, a portal is going to pop up. And 10 times out of 10, you will have to register onto that portal. And whenever you go into building the relationship with the Supplier Diversity Officer, in most cases, they're going to ask you to register onto that portal. And I think the very good first step is for you to already be registered, because it does not require anything. You have to just mention your company information, upload your capability statement, stuff like that, because that's the conversation breaker. They're going to just be like, okay, register onto the portal, and then we'll have the conversation. So if you want to skip the first step, always register onto the portal. And if you want to look at what are the companies that are part of, from the commercial standpoint, that are part of National Minority Supplier Diversity Council, NMSDC, they actually have their national conference coming in Atlanta this year, I think so. I'm pretty sure in June they have in Georgia Congress Center. And then another very good resource for you is Women Business Enterprise National Council, WEBank. because you get a directory of the corporates that are corporate sponsors, which means they're premier members. So they're about like a list of 300, 400 companies that are a partner with that organization. I'm just going to post the name here in the chat window. So you can look at those large corporations. Pretty much every time they're going to have a supplier diversity officer number mentioned there, or the email mentioned there. So connect with them. But yeah, Lakila, coming back to your point, do create an account on the Amazon Supplier Diversity portal if you haven't already, and they're going to ask for your capability statement. I think they're also open to have like a quarterly meeting if you are registered with them, just to give you an overview of the opportunities that are going to come through. So yeah, that's a good place to start. But if you're going to have the meeting, good luck. They are pretty inclusive. I think they are spending a lot of money into ramping up their program.
I'll be registered before the night is over. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, Varsha. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
And that's a very important point, because with the supply diversity programs, all the corporations, the schools, etc., we recommend that you go directly to their websites, look up supply diversity initiatives, diversity and inclusion initiatives, and make sure that you register to do business with them, so you can get that ongoing information. Wouldn't you echo that, Mona?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you have to do your part. And you just have to follow suit, follow the process that they have in place.
Mhm.
And set yourself up for, there's an old adage that says success is where opportunity meets preparation. So that's what we're helping you to do here, is prepare and get yourself prepared to do business. And then when that opportunity meets you, there you are, you're ready.
So as we wind down, did anyone have any more burning questions that they would like to ask our business advisors professionals?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, Kalicia. Did I pronounce
Hey,
it right?
Kalicia, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So first step I will do will be to register with sam.gov, and then to follow in place, because I wrote everything down. To follow in place, to get certified, I need to go to certified.sba.gov.
Yeah, for federal certifications, yes.
And then usaspending.gov.
The tracks expenditures, yes. Oh, you're getting it, yes.
Yes, ma'am. And then I need to, so I have one more question. So I was given the NAICS codes, and I was instructed, yes, ma'am, I was instructed to have 5 codes. Where does those codes play into this?
Well, you have to know, and Varsha, go ahead and answer that. So
I can take that question. So what happens when they're looking at the suppliers like yourselves, it's really difficult for any procurement officer to just sort through by the words and the services that you're providing. So NICS code actually helps them when they are trying to find a certain kind of service. They just put up the NICS code in the database, and all the companies that are related to that NICS code, that comes through. And that's the database then they look at. So that's how it plays the role. It helps the procurement officer identify the kind of services that you provide. And it is very important. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is extremely important, because when you are in the pool of 10,000 companies, trust me, it's only the code that's going to highlight your services.
So I have one more question. So with the NAICS code, yeah, when I create my account with SAMS.gov, do it go hand in hand with that?
Yes, so you will have to put up your NAICS code when you are registering. So they ask you what kind of services you provide. So you put up the code 1, 2, 3, 4, I mean, whatever your codes are. And to identify what codes your services are going to have, I think somebody posted here. I think we just posted here, naics.com. You can just go ahead and search your services, and there are going to be a bunch of NAICS code related to your services.
All right. And then after I complete that and add my NAICS codes, I go straight to the GBA.gov, so that I could create my UEI number.
So UEI number is going to be issued through sam.gov. So you go into sam.gov, there's a checklist available that helps you walk through the step of registration. And that's where you'll have to put up the information. So it's basically basic information, where your company was registered, so on and so forth. And that's where you'll have to put up these codes. So you go on to sam.gov to get your UEI number.
Okay, I'm good now. I have it. I wrote, when you guys was doing the slides and stuff, I wrote down what I assumed that was important. So I just wanted to make sure that I wrote it down correctly as you guys were saying.
Alicia,
And I wish
you did really good. And a nice fun site, if you want to kind of explore your NACES code, go to NACES. And I put it in the chat, NACES.com. And it's just a great site where you can put in keywords and it gives you an idea of your NACES code. It's less complicated than the government site. So it's in the chat. I put NACES.com. It's a great site to look up your codes related to your industry. So you can kind of play around with that site and select your codes by putting in keywords. But we are out of time. And I want to thank all my great speakers, Mona, Varsha, for being great business advisors. And I recommend everybody visit weop.org because we have a listing of events going on. And we try to, again, bring professionals that can provide you with information, resources, that we can put women that are actually securing contracts also in front of you as well, like Michelle Anderson, to talk about winning contracts, how to be prepared, and just how to get the wins that in 2023 we all deserve. So again, thank you for everyone. So, Jennifer, did you want to say something before we leave? I see your hand is up.
I did. I was just going to make the recommendation of something that was very helpful for me a couple of years ago, was getting a SBA rep. And I think you put in there that Diamond works a region 4, but they will assign you an SBA rep. And that's particular to the young lady who's trying to understand the process. It really is a difficult process initially, but once you see the big picture, it will make a lot more sense to you. But a rep or a mentor is invaluable. So I definitely would reach out to SBA for that contact.
And I would also say, stay connected to WEOP because we have a relation with the SBA, and Montez Diamond is going to be facilitating what we call monthly conversation meetings at the SBA. So she's going to be able to be the liaison for connecting you to SBA representatives that can answer questions about 8A, about subnet, about those things. So we're going to launch, she's going to launch monthly conversations, and we're going to post them all on our WEOP site, and she's going to start in April. So you'll be able to go down to the SBA. At our meeting, we have 5 SBA representatives at that meeting talking about their resources and programs. So thank you, Jennifer, for the comment. Again, thank you, everyone. And I want everybody to have a nice 2023 and make sure that you visit weop.org to stay connected to all the great events that we have, not trying to boast, but all the great events that we have to try to connect women to information, resources, and make sure that you can get your win in 2023.